there, I'm Shannon Ferguson, co-founder and CEO of FanSaves.
Thank you so much, Narissa. And hi, everyone. If you feel like you're standing still in your life or in your business, don't worry. Because if you're standing still, then at least you're still standing. I'm here to help you take back your power after overcoming hardship. I'm Shannon Ferguson, the co-founder and CEO of FanSaves. And before I founded my company, my life got a little flip turned upside down. Before I get into it, I'd love for you to leave the word yes or no in the comments. If you've ever felt like your life or your business is moving at a slower pace than you expected it would. I know this hit people hard during the recent pandemic when almost all of us were forced to stand still at some point. If you've ever felt like the tortoise in the fable, The Tortoise and the Hare, let me know in the comments. I really want you to know that if you feel like you're not constantly making big moves, you're not making millions of dollars in your business right off the bat, maybe you're not married yet or having kids or getting engaged like everyone on your social media, none of you are a failure. Being like the tortoise doesn't mean you're falling behind. Sometimes slow and steady is the way to win this race we call life. And sometimes standing at all is the best you can do on a given day. Sometimes getting out of bed is the best you can do, or putting food in your body, or having only one Zoom meeting, or completing only 1 or 2 business tasks. I'm not here to tell you that you should only just aspire to get out of bed in the morning, but on the days that you can very easily lie down and give up, if you get through those days, you're doing okay. Remember that you're still standing. My life was always very linear. I was always on the go as a kid and teenager. I graduated high school on time. I graduated university on time, started my career in marketing on time, and I even got married on time. My strong upbringing and my linear life can really be attributed to my mom. She was a single mom, I myself an only child, and she always wanted to ensure that I had a better life than her modest upbringing. She was an entrepreneur, and from a young age, I learned the value of hard work and never giving up. My mom and I have this bond that can never be broken, and I'm so glad she passed on her kindness, her strength, and her perseverance to me. My mom taught me to dream big, but that sometimes we can only take things one day at a time. And boy, was I gonna need to heed that advice. Because in 2014, my linear life became linear no more. Up until then, I had been living my life on time and not standing still at any given moment, until I was standing still. My mom was diagnosed with pulmonary fibrosis. She was healthy her whole life, and her doctors could never tell why her lungs had become scarred. I took time off from my career to be with her in the hospital after she underwent a double lung transplant. And during that time, I really started thinking, life is short. What am I doing with my life? Am I working in the right industry? A month after my mom's successful transplant, my husband woke up one morning, he packed his bags, and he told me that it was really affecting him, that I didn't know what I wanted to do with my life. I haven't heard his voice since that day. My life stood still as I tried to figure out what the hell was going on. A year later, the divorce was finalized, and it was finalized in the summer, and 3 months later, my mom had a heart attack, and after a month in the ICU, she passed away. I was the one who had to say that it was okay to the doctors to take her off life support. I lied with her in her bed as she took her last breath, and I told her it was okay to go. And as I got out of her hospital bed with her, my legs gave out on me and I couldn't physically stand up. I couldn't move, I couldn't breathe, but eventually I peeled myself up off the floor and my life stood still. And it stood still for over a year afterwards as I dealt with complicated grief. I never knew what complicated grief was, that it was actually a thing until I went through it. And it's a persistent form of intense grief. Basically seems like there's no future ahead. The year following my mom's passing was incredibly bleak for me. And the height of my grief culminated 3 months after her 1-year anniversary, when I found myself lying on my living room floor at 4 a.m., crying to my best friend on the phone that I just didn't want to be here anymore, that I just wanted to see my mom. I got through that dark night, and again, I peeled myself up off the floor. And 2 days later, a guy named Chris came into my life and my world changed. Chris and I began working together, and it wasn't long before we were also dating. My life began to grow again. Day by day I began to find my purpose. It didn't happen overnight, but slowly I was finding my happiness again in those little things. I liked getting out of bed in the morning. And about 6 months after meeting Chris, we co-founded FanSaves to help with a sponsorship problem that we were dealing with when we were running the marketing for the pro hockey team that we worked for. And now I'm here, more than 4 years later, and I'm doing things that back then seemed impossible to think of. I dealt with complicated grief and divorce and a career pause in a really short time, and my life was standing still. But I learned so much from that time in my life that it's possible to overcome standing still or life getting out of whack or seeming like things are paused. I learned that sometimes we need to hit the reset button and that we're always stronger than we think. That life is not linear and it's not meant to be. Life would actually be really boring if it was. Now, you might be here listening today and thinking your life is still on time, that you never stand still, that you always hustle. 10 years ago, I would have thought the same thing. We can never predict when our life or our business or anything might stand still. And maybe you've already been through it, or maybe you're going through it right now, or maybe you go through it in the future. Either way, it helps to be prepared. It helps to know how to navigate the feeling of standing still. And I want to share with you some ways that I took back my power after overcoming these hardships. And these things helped me realize that I was still standing the whole time, that the power is always within ourselves. The first thing is to be patient, but persevere. It's really important to trust the process and have faith. When babies start learning to walk and they fall down, they don't just stay crawling for the rest of their life. They persevere, they keep going, they learn. And it's really important to never give up. It's the same in business. You have to crawl before you walk and walk before you run. At FanSaves, when Chris and I first founded our company, we thought we'd be millionaires within the first couple of years. We learned really soon that that's not the way it goes, and you often have to grow slow to grow big, and that most businesses are actually a 10-year overnight success. The other thing that's really important is to accept change. Changing course doesn't always mean giving up. You know, when a caterpillar begins its transition and becomes a cocoon, and over the winter starts its transformation, it's probably thinking, what the hell is going on? But it accepts those changes and comes out on the other side, a beautiful butterfly. You know, negative changes, they can actually lead to really positive things, and sometimes you have to go through them to get to the other side. But if you trust that everything happens for a reason and know that changing course doesn't mean giving up, then you're going to be okay. The last thing that it's important to do is to lean in. When you are able to let go of the idea of perfection and give yourself some grace, you can then use that time to re-energize and tap into your creativity. You know, the world is such a busy place, and when you're standing still, you can actually try to enjoy the stillness and the quiet. And it's important to continue to have a vision or create a new one, even on those really hard days. In the end, you can choose to not still be standing, to lie down and give up. But then what? You're not a failure, even if it feels like you're standing still and not sure what your next move will be. You're not a failure if your business is growing slower than you expected. You're not a failure if you're overcoming hard times and big changes. Treat yourself like a car. When your car runs out of gas, you don't just send it to the junkyard. You go and you fill it up with gas and you keep going. So fill yourself up so you have the power to keep going. In the end, you'll see that you were never actually standing still at all, that the progress you made during those humbling times is ultimately what catapulted you forward in the end. And like my mom always said, take everything one day at a time and trust in yourself no matter what. She'll always be alive in my words, in my actions, in my hope for the future. And I still always hear her words reminding me to keep going. So even on the hard days in my life or with FanSaves, I remind myself that I need to be patient, to accept change, and to lean in. And I hope these tips can really help you take back your power as well. And even if you're still standing, even if you're standing still, remember that you are still standing. Thank you so much, and I hope to connect with you online.